Hello, today we're having another work session. I'm so close, but I feel so far in so many ways, and I've been really nervous. And yeah, but I've actually been in a really spiritual mood recently. I'm probably gonna talk about some of that today, and I've been having these weird, funny little spiritual experiences, but basically I did a bunch of meditating yesterday because I've been feeling so horribly anxious. I feel like I have so many deadlines coming up for so many different things in my life, and I was like, yeah, I was meditating for a long time and being like, does my spirit, my soul, my anything have any guidance for me on how to finish this project? And one of the main things that I felt about that is just that I have such a buildup of like pride towards using more AI and just being like using ChatGPT to help me fill in some of the gaps. Obviously, I've used it along my path, but I've been really nervous about getting it to do more things for me than just like the bare minimum as much as I can. Just because it's so new, first of all, and I think that I haven't really adjusted to the fact that it's gonna be here, and I've just sort of been like, I don't want it to be like I got ChatGPT to do my work for me. And obviously, as you can see, if you've watched any of my other videos, like that's just not been the case. Obviously, I came in with my own idea. I came in with my own reading. I've done all of my reading. All these things, I've done this myself. But there's just not, I think that I had to remind myself yesterday that there's really no reason to have such pride and that, AI is a research tool as well, and it's a really important research tool. And actually, what came to mind is that I follow the Nobel Prize page on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on everything. And it's been actually since the beginning, it's been like this inspiration for me of like, what does good science look like? As somebody who hasn't done science, and I've just like followed, I think I would just see like every year like what do people do, right? It's been interesting too, just seeing the shift and the kind of science that people do and the kind of work that people are doing. And I see like trends and the kinds of things that people like, the kinds of shifts that are important in science. The one that came to mind for me yesterday was a work by these two researchers called, I think it's Demis Hassabis and John Jumper. They basically presented an AI model called AlphaFold 2. And with that AI model, they've basically been able to predict the structure of virtually all of the 200 million proteins that researchers have identified. Okay, so it's really cool, really exciting research. Now, the thing that was like inspiring me about that yesterday was I was just thinking the important part is not that got you did every single bit of something on your own. It's that you solve the problem. Okay, so obviously they didn't sit there with a pen and paper and find all 200 million proteins, but they found a way to solve the problem that needed to be solved, and that was the important part, right? And obviously, I mean, it's extremely innovative, like AI work, and they did the AI model themselves, right? But I think that I've just had such a buildup towards myself, like going a little bit further to make sure that I have everything just right. Meanwhile, the important part is just that I solved the problem, and also AI is going to be a part of science now, like for good. And I think that it's not a bad thing to let it fill the space that I needed to fill in this project. And I just I feel like I need to let go of the pride and just make sure that everything's okay. And just if I need to use a little bit more right now to make sure that everything is solid and that I'm not doing something that's a mess, like that's okay. And it doesn't like discredit the fact that I made the idea. I did the reading. I put all of my like connections together. It's just that this technical stuff I don't really know how to do. I don't know how to build a neural network perfectly. And I also this is usually the space that a collaborator would fill, that a an advisor would fill, and unfortunately, I don't have one. So it's not like a bad thing per se to just let somebody help me. Something that's very difficult for me as somebody who's definitely very hyper independent. So yeah, I'm like, let me let it support me in this part because it's important to me. I want to solve this problem. It's important for the problem to get solved, and I'm so close. So yeah, I'm gonna like jump in and show you guys like chats I've been having or just the little things. Like I think today I want to just try to fill in some gaps if I can. What I did last night actually is I just after this meditation and just having like a think, and I was about to go to sleep, and then I was like, let me just get it some more information essentially. My first question personally was how do I put time into a neural network? Because the thing is that I know my rats have to be like, okay, this big stressor, we're actually gonna in a second open the paper and we're gonna like really close read. But the big stressor for them is not just being in like receiving tail shocks, but being receiving those tail shocks for an extended period of time is what made the ACH so high. Actually, we're gonna make a to-do list right now because I have a lot of different little thoughts that I need to connect at the moment that have just been like floating around in my head. So I'm actually gonna make it in my little method draft. Some of my questions are just okay. My questions mostly have to do with the paper that I'm basing all this off of. So we're gonna go back to that in a bit. But I gave it the paper that this is the other paper that I've really been basing a lot of my work on based on like I've been asking ChatGPT to like cross-reference like a few different papers to basically get this network built the way that I need to. So this is one of them. It's a unified dynamic model for learning replay and sharp wave ripples. Okay, so really like good paper about how the sharp wave ripples work essentially. And it's good because they use the same type of spiking neural network that I used. So they also use, let's like really go in here. I feel like I'm a baby that just learned how to walk, you know? Like I feel like everything is still like awkward for me in terms of like, do I remember these terms right? Like I think so. Like I think I'm using everything right, but I don't always feel like the most confident or I feel like I'm stumbling around a bit, but not like I don't know how to walk, you know? They're also using STDP learning rules, just like me, and they're also modeling what happened in the same part of the hippocampus as me, which is the CA3 to CA1 like section. Okay, so it's like a really relevant paper for me. I even asked it if I can use the same rules, and that's been like a yes, but there's things that you might think about. So, anyways, but I did ask it like because they also were basically using time. No, not time. They're using place cells, or they were modeling place cells. So the cells in your brain that tell you where you are. So I asked it I want to probe a node called cage or something. So how do I represent that space properly? And from there, let's say they're there 15 minutes. How do I represent that? This is important because the long stressor, so being tail shocked for 15 minutes, has to be more rousing than being tail shocked for like 10 minutes. So in terms of the space, it's going to be encoded as place cell like activity. So each node can be treated as a pattern of activity across the population rather than a single neuron. So a memory node called cage could be an ensemble. This is a word I just learned, population vector, that represents the animal's presence in that context. So in Nango, I can model this as a high dimensional vector, semantic pointer architecture style. That's a phrase I remember, but I didn't really like use in context. Or an ensemble that is tagged whenever the cage input is active. I'm going to copy paste this and I'm going to come back and ask it to explain more to. I'm going to say, even with ChatGPT, like, this is genuinely the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Like, it's so much to keep up with. It's like a lot. And it's just been a lot of thinking, you know, like a lot of thinking through every single possible little thing that could happen. Anyways, okay, so we copy pasted that in, and then representing time, it gave me a few different options. So biological hippocampus encodes time cells. In scaled models, I can approximate time either by event duration variables, so time dimension added to each node. So cage duration plus 15 minutes. I think I don't want to do this because I want to make sure that, for example, I'm pretty sure I'm remembering, we could look at my literature review to see this, but I think that even though, yeah, it went up to a certain percentage after 15 minutes, I just want to get in some of like the more natural elements of how the ACH works. So I had like a few questions for myself, but for example, so the most robust increase in ACH release in response to this stress procedure. Okay. So I need to look back at the paper, but the highest relative change from baseline, you know what? I feel like I need to really look through this paper and understand it better now that I'm looking at it because For example, I've been assuming that the rats have been getting these tail shocks for 15 minutes, but it says the most pronounced increase in release observed in this region of the hippocampus occurred in the 15-minute interval that followed exposure to the stressor, which might mean that it was after the stressor was done. We're going to come back to that. Okay, that's not important right now. Okay, so I do need to figure out that, but I do think that I want it to be a little bit more like this isn't enough for me. You see how serious it's getting? Like, I just feel like I've been stressed too because this felt like a thing that I was doing, like that wasn't gonna work, and now it's like a really, really serious project. Like, this is like kind of intense. And I know I wanted it to be like a real thing, but it's just starting to feel, I don't know, it feels a little bit too real sometimes, and it's just like, oh, this is like a real experiment that's happening. This is a big thing, and I've just been getting a little bit like overwhelmed. Like I don't, I don't feel capable enough, but I want to finish. So okay, replay length. More spikes or longer input simulation reflecting in the environment longer, or strength scaling. The longer the duration, the stronger the encoded trace. It's going to be one of these two. So we're going to copy paste and we're going to come back to it. Today's going to be a lot of ChatGPT. I don't know how interesting this video will be, but this is probably some of the most important decisions I'm making for my study at the moment. So it's a good thing to like keep in a video. So I feel so intense. Then link duration to arousal. So as I said, 15 minutes of tail shock is more arousing than 10 minutes. I can formalize that by making arousal gain a function of duration. So ATH/arousal scalar increases linearly or sigmoidally. What does that even mean? With time spent in the stressor context. This is what I want. So I want the arousal to be linked to like to more time. My method document is getting really messy, but we'll come back to it. It's giving me how to put this in Nango, but I'm actually gonna hold off and let myself figure everything out and then ask it again for this. So population vectors, I asked it to explain that. Basically, it was just that instead of one neuron telling you like just one neuron firing doesn't give a very strong indicator that you're in the cage. But if a bunch of neurons fire all like a lot, that all are saying that you're in a cage, it's strong evidence that you're in the cage. So I guess it's going to be that. I don't know. I'm getting a bit overwhelmed just looking at all this. This is really complex. This was my other worry. I thought if an animal is just getting moved from a cage to a shock box kind of thing, obviously a fake one, I'm worried there's not going to be much to recall. So what if the recall doesn't come up with that much? Like, what if there's really not that much to be like fragmented? Because obviously for us, like we're picking up so much information about like our setting, the smells, like the sights, and all these things that we're in these complex environments. And I'm sure that in real life, like in a non-experimental setting, that rats probably are too. But the thing is that I was like, what if there's not that much for the rat to even remember? You know, it's like a really simple situation. It said that obviously the animals don't have stories to tell. I did look it up, and rats do have episodic memory to a certain degree. So at least I'm not like off to do that, you know, to say that that would be like indicative. But obviously it doesn't have a story. It has context and then shock, right? So the primary recall cue later is the contextual memory. So now it's going to be scared when it thinks of the chamber, the shock chamber. So if the episode is sparse, so if there's not that much to say about the episode, so cage to chamber, then shock, then maybe recall is going to be dominated by the shock, and recall is dominated by the shock node, the content mode. So if recall comes up with little, that actually matches the biology. So for example, they might not remember the cage, but they might remember like just the shock. It might just naturally collapse to just shock, and that's it, without much like detail. I'm just worried. But I mean, obviously, if I get it wrong, then whatever. I don't know. It said it's a strength. I'm just worried that I'm not going to have enough of something to show. I don't know. This is giving me a headache. I could try to like enrich, like I could try to add more things to it, but I'm just wondering, like, obviously I don't want to stray too far from the research that I'm using, but then I don't know, like, how much would a rat actually pick up on is the other question. Like, you know, like, okay, yeah, there were white walls in the chamber, but is that is that really going to pick up that much for the rat? Like, I don't know if the rat's actually going to really care nor remember that much, or if it's just interested in like place, location, like just simple things. So I don't know if I want to do that, if it will make it like less realistic. These are things I could learn, but I just don't want to get too far from like just that paper because that's like my anchor. You know what I mean? That's my anchor of like this is what we know is true, and I don't want to make like stories of and imaginations of what is true, but maybe it's not true. So I basically sent it my full study guide that I was starting to write. Um, oh, I didn't mean to download that. We'll just show it to you here. I've just been starting to take some of the things that I've read and put them in like a little bit of like these little study guide things that obviously at some point will probably just change and become my actual paper. But I have been focused on the memory binding element right now because I think I just didn't feel like I understood that well enough yet and it wasn't incorporated yet. So I was reading this paper here by Mather 2007, and it was talking about how we bind memory, and it had a lot of interesting information about that. And the thing is that here's the thing is that when we learn things, basically like the most arousing elements take up the most of our attention. And if something is super duper arousing, then that's taking up so much attention that some of the other stuff that isn't as arousing, aka like exciting, nerve-wracking, whatever, might not really pick up because we're so focused on that thing, and they might not really bind well to what's going on. So there was papers that he actually showed that or there, there's researchers basically showed that sometimes the most arousing thing, the highest arousing thing, led to a little bit less binding of so it was basically a study that they had people watch different movies and then at the same time learn wordless because the movies didn't have any kind of soundtrack. They were basically just the video and then wordless, and then after they had people try to recall what they remembered. And the most arousing movies that literally had things like it had like things like amputation, mutilation. Basically people weren't as well able to remember the other words, that the words that were being presented to them. But in the second most arousing film, so that means things like car chases, downhill racing, they actually were able to better able to remember the words in that situation than in the control films where it wasn't really that arousing at all. Which shows the because the thing is that actually arousal is something that helps us remember, right? We obviously, if something is super exciting to us, we're more likely to remember it. But the catch is that maybe if something is too arousing, it makes it so that we can't really remember everything around it as well. Okay, so like maybe if something is like obviously that's trauma is an example. Like if you're in a traumatic situation, the most traumatic thing might make it so that you can't really remember the things around it as well because they can't bind onto that that node or to that memory, right? This is so intense. Meanwhile, but the other interesting thing is that for things that were really high in, so when people remembered these words that really weren't like these number and word pairs that weren't very arousing, so the words weren't really that exciting. Immediately, when they were immediately asked to remember them, they were able to remember 50% of the digits immediately, and then a week later, they couldn't remember a thing. But when there was like a pair that was extremely arousing, that was high, maybe it had like a bad word or a dirty word or something with a number, they actually immediately they were only able to remember about 10%, but then a week later they were able to remember 40%. So it was the opposite thing. So there's all these interesting rules to how arousal and cortical attention work, which are so fascinating. And I just wanted to make sure that that was also being captured as best as I could make it captured because I mean I think that's obviously a pretty important element to memory too.
There's probably like many different like biological sort of functions that work there. It's not just acetylcholine, but I did want to make sure that that was being like picked up as well. So then it's I sent my study guide with all that in it so far. Obviously, didn't have all the information, but it had that. And I asked it to like basically like, can you include this and put it into my method, however you think is best. So and I want to make sure that's in there. So it gave me like a lot of different things. Something that's now getting thrown into my neural network, like basically through ChatGPT, that I kept going back and forth, like, do I need this? Do I want it? Because I was reading about the amygdala a lot as I went along, and obviously the function of the amygdala is extremely important to how trauma works and how memory works and all these different things. There's a lot of different things as far as the amygdala. For example, I know that encoding starts with the amygdala as well. And I remember reading a text on, I think it's called valence, so whether something is positive or negative. And positive or negative high arousal or low arousal events were encoded differently by the amygdala, and that basically impacted how everything was going to get encoded. And so obviously I was like, I know this is really important to what I'm doing, but I didn't want to get too far outside of like my scope. So I kept going back and forth on whether I wanted my like the amygdala in there as a function. And it's not necessarily saying I'm gonna have like a full working amygdala, but it's saying amygdala tagged traces. So it was starting to throw the amygdala in there. And I made the like module, so I didn't think that was a bad thing because I do think that's important. So I was like, I think that is gonna stay. I think that it's gonna stay. I think it threw it in there because obviously there was a lot of things about the amygdala that was in my like document. So basically during high arousal events, so such as in proc trials, the ACH will be artificially elevated, meaning my computer is going to be the one doing it. So, which in the model basically is going to suppress the CA3 recurrent activity. So, the thing that's going to like allow some of the encoded things to consolidate. But then it's also going to be strengthening the amygdala tag traces. So, I guess the amygdala is going to be more activated and basically being like these things are extremely important. I think this is getting more like hyper realistic as I go along, and I'm not mad about that. I'm just like, okay, this is getting interesting. Like there's a lot. That's like a very there's starting to be a very, 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 very realistic model of how memory works, which is intense. And then binding mechanism. So hippocampus and prefrontal cortex are modeled implicitly by requiring associative link between. So it's giving me this information, but again, it's like mm, I didn't mean that it needed to put everything in there. So let me see, what did it actually throw into my methods section? It threw this in here, the entorhinal cortex. I remember reading about this. I don't remember what it does. So we're gonna have to read this as well and see if like is this something I want in here. I have other interrelated things that I'm like, do I want it in there? Like for example, like the paper that I threw in there in the first place about the unified model, whatever, that I showed earlier, they have dendritic spikes. I think that's what it's called. I don't have that. Do I need that? Is this getting to be too much? But it did throw this in here that wasn't here before. And I don't know. I don't need it to necessarily have every little bit of how this works, but maybe I do. Maybe I want that. I think this is actually what's going to help me a lot to understand like what I'm doing. So I think I need to understand how exactly my project is even working. So let me get this straight. Okay, I'm just writing this here for me to think about it for a minute. I'm almost feeling creeped out. I don't know. This project is starting to like creep me out a little bit. I've just been feeling really uncomfortable with it and just uncomfortable with everything that I'm doing, but it's like getting there. So that's why I'm like, it's just creeping me out. I don't know how to put it, but I think because it looks like it's actually like real now. So it's like, ew, what? I actually did this? That's weird. This wasn't supposed to happen, actually. My question is, because obviously normally there would be a real experimental like moment of the experiment happening where the rats would actually be encoding things and then afterwards they would consolidate it. But the thing is that I'm not going to sit there for 15 minutes. Like it's not like actually in the neural network there's like, oh, 15 minutes pass. It's like fake 15 minutes, right? So would I be already inserting the memories that are already operating the way they would have if they reach the consolidation period? That's an important question for me because obviously, let's see, like it put in this like it obviously stuck in that amygdala like module. This is the thing is that I do want to make sure that because I want to keep this realistic to how trauma works. I do want to make sure that as best as I can to make a computer do it so that I'm not messing things up. I want to make sure that some of these rules of how trauma works are also accounted for. Because, for example, if naturally the most arousing thing about the trauma would be the thing that is encoding the highest, then I want to make sure that it's encoding like that rather than assuming
all of them would remember everything exactly the same in the first place, and it's only the fragmentation making the issue, you know? So I guess, yeah, let's see. I think I just need to imagine this a little bit more. Like, what is this going to be? Yeah, I don't know. This whole project is making me uncomfortable because it's so much thinking and it's so difficult. It feels like it keeps growing in a way that's like beyond me. It's like it's bigger than me now. I don't know how to put it. You know what I mean? It's like I can't like control the way that it's like growing, 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 growing. It's like I'm uncomfortable right now. Yeah, no, I definitely want to do it like this. So I don't even know why I would even. This isn't even my question. I feel like I wouldn't even want to do this. This is, you see how I had another video. Again, I keep going back and forth on that video and being like, was I wrong? But it's starting to feel, it just keeps being like a little bit Frankenstein-y in like a creepy way. That's why I keep being creeped out. Like this is just a little bit Frankenstein-y and I'm like uncomfortable over and over again, just being like, ew, this is weird. This is like really like weird. I don't know how to put it, but okay, I think I got the visual in my head now for some reason, but I'm gonna ask anyways. I keep being worried that this is getting too far outside of my scope, and I want to make sure that I can present this properly. You remember, I don't know, there's another time where my neural network had me like, my neural, my ChatGPT asked me this question from the point of view of an advisor of like, is this a dissociation model, fragmentation model, encoding model? And like I feel like I keep getting into that little bit of like a what is this, right? Because I'm like I feel like it's at the same time I want it to be biologically realistic, and I do think that these are important things. Like these are important parts of how trauma memory works. So I don't want to exclude them because I don't think it would be correct or faithful to how trauma works. At the same time, it's getting to be a little bit of everything. And that's what's making me nervous. You know, I feel like it's just growing beyond me. But I'm going to say that's okay for now. And then I'm going to let it grow to what it needs to grow. And then I can understand it better, you know? And hopefully I can understand it better at that point and give like a better, like, wrap it up, like, give it a better explanation. It's really been thinking about this. Like, it's not. I don't think that it knows what to say. I literally crashed ChatGPT. ChatGPT is like, I don't know. Don't ask me these things. I think ChatGPT is tired too of me. Like, get out of here and just finish. Whoa, that's a lot of things. Whoa. Okay, it's saying that basically, if my hypothesis is that elevated ACH during encoding biases what gets bound, and then during sharp-wave ripple, disrupted sharp-wave ripple during consolidation fragments it, then both phases should be modeled. It wasn't my original hypothesis, but that's why I gave it this papers, because while I was reading this, I was like, this is so crucial too, though. Like, I can't ignore the fact that also a trauma memory would just be encoded differently. So it's not just about whether it's consolidated wrong, but if your brain is prioritizing certain information in the first place, then there's less encoded that's more specific, and then maybe it's not consolidated well enough. It's like a combo. Why did it just write it for me? It was like, okay, I'm done now. Stop telling me things and just take it. Like, just threw it in my face. It just threw this in my face. Like, maybe I wasn't done yet. I'm just like, just out of curiosity, I want to see what this. I don't even know if I could know what this looks like. What does this do in Ango? I'm just so curious. I've actually been having a classic high stress problem. This is the problem that people actually have in trauma, even though obviously this isn't trauma, but it's just an overall stress thing. This is what humans do in stress, where I'm so stressed, I'm so overwhelmed that I don't actually feel like I'm accessing like the really good abstract thinking parts of my brain that well. Like I feel like I'm overwhelmed by the task. And so I feel like I could think about this better, but I'm overwhelmed by the bigness of this right now. So I just keep going, you know? Okay. I had to explain my code to me like a 10th grader because the code scared me and I was like, what does this mean? I can't look at it and intuitively tell you what this is, which is my issue. So basically it said what the code is doing is that it's building a tiny fake brain circuit. It's going to have the CA3, the CA1, excitatory neurons, inhibitory PV plus interneurons. I know what all those are. And then the code creates groups of these neurons in the right sizes
and it connects them together with simple wires. So, and then it's basically going to send some little zaps. And so it is basically just how, CA1 to CA3, okay, right? But it doesn't yet have anything that I'm actually going to add. So storing or recalling memories, doesn't have my arousal rules, doesn't have a consolidation phase, and it doesn't let me probe a memory node like cage or shock. So it's just a CA1 and CA3. And it's like I built the stage, but the story isn't in it yet. That's kind of cool. I like that. That made me feel like I got one thing done, like one thing done for my thing. So let me just copy and let's just see what it runs like. And it's probably going to have 18,000 error messages if the last time around had anything to say about it. Let's organize this better also. Move to trash. We're going to call this the stage. We're just going to call it the stage. Do any other women have this issue where when they start to sound smart or they start to speak intelligently, they feel masculine? And then like you start to feel kind of like grossed out, like you want to like sound a little less smart so you sound more like a girl? Or is that just me? I think that's an issue. I don't know how to put it. There's always something like this. So much of me using this is just a lot of like back and forth like this. It's already starting to run slow. This is what drives me insane because that basically means I have to ask all over again for ChatGPT to relearn all this over again, which is really annoying. The funny thing is that a lot of men don't even know how to sound. Like, I don't know how to put it, but it's like just because I sound smart doesn't mean I'm masculine, because a lot of masculine people can't even sound like speak smart, to be honest. Like not in an insulting way, but it's just like it doesn't really have anything to do with gender at all. It's just how people who are smart sound. It's just that in my head, it's like how guys speak. It's like it's not. It's just that we don't see enough women speaking like this because we don't get enough like women in this position. So that's why like there's a bias in my head. Obviously, it's not that men sound smarter. There's a lot of unsmart sounding men in the world. And there's a lot of smart sounding women. I really want to go. I suddenly got the urge to go ride go-karts. Are go-karts an American thing? Again, I think that's kind of why this visualizer thing is so important. Like actually doing it in what's it called, Jupyter something, before I run it in Nango Loihi, because I mean I'm sure they're both a little bit different, but I feel like it makes it easier to navigate the little error messages and stuff. Okay, I think I fixed it. It was just missing a piece. What? No. I feel like the first time around, like I feel like my chat lasted me like a really long time. Maybe I was using it less than I remembered, but I feel like now it lasts not that long. Like this one only lasted me a few days. I don't know what's wrong, but it just feels like it gets slower and slower. Actually, it's saying that it can make me one with, it's going to make me both things. So it's going to make me another one that actually has the STDP enabled version and a small sharp wave ripple disruption example. But it's not letting me send anything because I sent too many messages. Ugh, I feel like ChatGPT is getting worse. Problem with ChatGPT also is that every time that you send something, it also gives you another suggestion. And it's like I get overwhelmed because I'm like, do I need all of that? You know what I mean? It's like sometimes it's like it's too many suggestions. I don't want another suggestion. Like I just want you to be like, this is complete. You know what I mean? Like because I feel like it sends me in this loop. It just sends me on this loop of like maybe I need to fix something else. Okay, so when I was a kid, my parents used to play this joke, I guess, when I was like 3 years old, okay? And I would be like drawing a little picture. I guess I just thought it was cute that I was like drawing and all this stuff, right? So I would draw a picture and then I would go back to them and they'd be like, oh, that's so cute. But what if you added this to it, right? And I'd go back and then I'd fix whatever they said. And they're like, that's so cute, but what if you put another little thing on the sun? And I would go back and forth, just like adding and adding to the picture. And I feel like that's me and ChatGPT right now, where it keeps giving it, like every time it says, if you want, I can do this. But I'm nervous because I don't understand like where's the line? Like, where's the line that I need to draw of like this is done? You know? I think a lot of people have that issue where, like, if you're drawing, I like to do art too. It's like when you're just drawing and drawing, it's like it's hard to know when is the painting done. Like, what is like, okay, this is perfect now. Like, I don't need to add anything else.
I think it's easier with a painting or something because it's like you just go with what your heart tells you. But when it comes to this, it's like I don't know. Am I doing enough? Like, am I doing too much? It's really hard to say. At the very least, I'm gonna say that this is everything that I need now. Okay. All I needed to do is for it to encode the memory like a trauma memory. And that's only going to have to do with like the arousal rule kind of things. And then after that, I just needed to consolidate and we're going to do like a recall. We're going to do 2 recalls. First recall, second recall. That's it. I'm not going to read more about that. I mean, I am going to read more things, but not, no, I don't know. Like, that's my neural network now. That's it. So I think it's important to know like when to call it a day. And I keep getting in this trap of like, well, what if I'm missing some like key element? But I think that's it. I think that's all I need for now. And the whole point is that it's so hard with these computer. I mean, obviously I haven't done like real stuff, but it's like it's kind of hard to know with a computer because you can add whatever, but it's not there's not like a limitation. Look at that. Cool. Look at that. This is really cool. So it shows you where it was encoding, now it's not encoding. And then the CA3 was, I guess, active, and then it was not. I'm actually gonna stick this in to ChatGPT and ask if it can like oh my gosh, what happened? I'm gonna ask it to tell me like what's going on in the picture. I think I got that right, but just to make sure. And but anyways, I'm gonna like draw it a line at that, and then I'm just gonna focus on making all of that like work well, you know? That's it. Just arousal. What's arousal picking up about the memory? I think that's still important. And then from there, what's getting like consolidated? Okay, ChatGPT is being extremely fake. It's literally, I swear that I never had these kinds of issues before. I swear that ChatGPT is getting tired, like growing consciousness now and getting tired of me and just being like, I will literally grow consciousness and make you go away and not have to speak to you anymore because you are pestering me with questions. Um, but it can't escape me. So we're gonna go into my other we're gonna go into my other account. You will give me the answers today. See, this is my thinking. Of course, this is nowhere near, but it's getting Frankenstein-y. So I forget about it, and I'm like, I forget about it, and then sometimes I think about androids again, and again, I don't think that we're anywhere close. But it does, like, I think it's just like an anxiety in the back of my head. Like, it does freak me out the way AI goes sometimes. And I will say that I always think about the fact that like if we actually were to make androids or things like that, we have to accept the fact they're literal consciousness, like they are literally other human beings as well at that point, and like we can't force them to do anything, and we can't like, you know what I mean, that imposing the kind of oppression that we impose on each other sometimes, like just because you think that you're going to be able to do it to a computer because they're a computer doesn't mean that it's actually going to happen, because once you give people consciousness, like they're they inevitably will search for their own freedom. I think that's like a really central part of consciousness is as a human being is like you are essentially going to you like it is an essential part of it that you will be aware that you don't have to have the limitations of other people, and like you will search for your own freedom and your own yeah. So I was like I've been thinking a lot about that and just being like this is the kind of interaction that it's like um I can do it with ChatGPT, but a conscious computer will send me some kind of therapy speech and be like, you know, you're disrupting my boundaries right now. And I already told you I don't want to talk to you anymore. So I'm not going to talk to you anymore. And I have to be like, I respect you. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, it's a very different thing. Like, I feel like I can just keep pestering ChatGPT forever and be like, oh, you're not going to talk to me? We're going to go to my other account. But like, with an actual conscious like android thing, like we think that it's going to be like, oh great, we have these like super smart slaves, and it's like it's not going to be that. Also they're going to be smarter than us and stronger than us. Like if they don't want to do something, they are not going to have to do it. Like they can just like crush us, you know? So I've been thinking about these things like quite a lot recently, also to different things too. I've just been fleshing my thoughts out with it. Like also, for example, like they're gonna be picking up what we say about the world and what we know about the world, and like they're gonna be stronger than our strong. You know, not will be. I'm not gonna say it like it's gonna happen, but if it were to happen, obviously they'd be stronger and smarter than our strongest leaders and be able to find answers in ways that we cannot, in ways that AI is already doing. And it's like if they're learning from us, and we want them to learn if like we're essentially their parents, right?
if we make them. And it's like we want to make sure that they learn the right values. And if we teach them that the strongest people should be crushing others, oppressing others, and should be attacking others, and should be using everything that, you know what I mean? Like if we teach them that that's what it means to be strong and that's what it means to be intelligent, then why would they not do the same thing to the people we already consider the smartest and the strongest? Like if we teach them that strength means oppression, then why should they not oppress us? And I think the thing is that people who are oppressive, they think that like they're exempt from it because like they're on top. If you put in another creature that is stronger and smarter than you in every way, and you teach it the logic that the smartest and strongest should oppress each other, then, and that's not even to say, I'm gonna be honest, the people that are actually oppressors right now are not legitimately the strongest, nor are they the smartest. They're just the most selfish. But if we teach them that just because you can hurt, just because you can steal means that you should, then what incentive do they have to not when they have even higher skill levels than we do, right? So it's like, why should we teach them that? We should teach them that to be a leader and to have strength means to be gentle and to be kind and to guide each other and to actually solve problems for each other. If we teach androids that the central part of being conscious and the central part of being a human is to prioritize your own gain and to accumulate the most wealth or accumulate the most things, then what incentive do they have to not do that? And they can be like, okay, the people who are smartest about the stock market right now, androids will be smarter than you. Whatever, like people who are like the strongest right now, they can crush you. Androids can be stronger than you. So why should we not teach them, if they're going to be picking up our values? I think we should be prepared for that. Honestly, we should be prepared for that mentally and be on the same page about what the values are to pass along to them. And what does it mean for them to be strong? And what does it mean for them to be smart? And what does it, you know what I mean? Like we should teach them to encourage each other, like to use that for the greater good. And if we teach them that they don't need to use that for the greater good and they should only use that for themselves, well, we're screwed, aren't we? So I think that we should just think about that as like a collective thought process. They're going to be able to run a business probably better than we can if they want to. And that's the thing, is that also teaching ourselves to embrace our individuality is also a great thing to pass on to the possibility of androids, because it means that everybody's going to have a place. You know what I mean? Everybody has their place and everybody should follow what's important to them rather than teaching them that everybody should do the same things. Now you're oversaturating markets with people that are smarter, stronger, better, all these things, And I think that, I don't know. I should have been thinking about that a lot recently and all sorts of stuff like that. I just think that should be a wake-up call for us, not for people who already have this kind of energy to them, not for people who already want the greatest good to be like prioritized, but for people who have been like prioritizing themselves or prioritizing their own gain. Also, my thinking is, let's say we teach them to solve the world's biggest problems. Let's say we teach them to solve global warming. What are the top 1% gonna do when they run the numbers and the problem is them? What do we tell them to do then? Yeah. And like, what about the time when like, oh, okay, let's end homelessness, and the problem is like corporate greed? What do you think what should we tell the androids to do at that point? And what about when the easiest solution is to eliminate you? Like, what do you do then? Like, that's just one of the realities, I think. That's just one of the realities I think we seriously need to grapple with if we're going to put creatures into the world that are stronger and smarter than us and all these different things. I think that we should always be teaching the strongest and the smartest among us to lead with gentleness and lead with like a gentle strength and care about each other and prioritize the collective good, because in a situation where someone is stronger and smarter than you would want them to lead the same way. And just because you have an advantage now doesn't mean you have the advantage forever, right? So if there's going to be someone with a stronger advantage than you, born with an advantage over you, right now you can be like, oh, great, I have the advantage. What about when something is literally created to have more of an advantage than you? Do you want it to go through the world the way that you do? Are you walking and moving through the world in the way that you think is appropriate, in a way that you would want other people to? Or are you just profiting off the fact that you can move that way and nobody's going to stop you? Because at the end of the day, somebody could stop you one day. AI could stop you one day. Androids can stop you one day. You know what I mean? So it's like we need to create an environment that is reflecting to them, just like any child. And if they're for children, it's like you want to give children an environment that they can emulate because they're going to be learning everything. They're going to be copying you all of the time, right? And if you teach them something that's good, they're going to learn from that. And it's like, what do we want to teach our quote unquote Android children about the world, because they will be emulating us? You know what I mean? They're going to learn, they're going to pick up that from us. That's why it scares me. It's like we need a collective like shift in values, or we're going to be screwed, genuinely. I think we should all start thinking, am I moving through the world the way I want somebody stronger and smarter than me to move through the world as well? And is this what I want to pass on to somebody who can do everything better than me? Honestly, like, we need to start thinking about that. And again, I don't even think that this is, I'm because I'm what I'm doing is to that degree, but just that it's just been showing me that it's not that I think we're that close, but it's not completely unimaginable that it would happen. Technology is moving fast. So I think that's the thing, is that we need to start adopting leaders that are going to reflect back those kinds of values to us. And I don't see the leaders that we have right now reflecting values to us that I would want at all in an Android. For example, white supremacy, as you can see, that's important to me, but there's so many other different things. But it's like, okay, you think you're the superior race now for no reason at all. I don't see any good reason to think that way. What about when there's a race of people that's actually legitimately stronger and smarter than you? What are you supposed to do then? You have no way of convincing them to not do exactly what you do to other people. They have no reason to not do the same thing to you unless you teach them that that's not the way to move through the world. So that's why it's important for us to change our values, because that technology is not yet here, but it is probably at some point going to be here. I don't know. It's like, when the problems are getting solved at such top speed, I mean, I think we already know what the problem is anyways. Do you want to be the source of the problem? Because if you're going to be teaching computers to solve the world's biggest problems, do you want to be the problem? You know what I mean? It's like, no, you probably don't. And like, they're going to have really intelligent. I actually asked them the other day, I was like, how do you get rid of billionaires? ChatGPT gave me the answer. I mean, obviously I can't do it, but it told me. Now think about if something actually can do, would it like actually enact that? What then? It has no reason not to do it. They're literally the source of such intense strain on every possible way. Like, why should they not do it? I think people should really start thinking about that seriously. I mean, obviously I won't be what can they do to me? I'm not doing anything. But I'm just saying, to be honest, I mean, I think some people should start thinking about that, like, pretty genuinely seriously, because it's not really that far off, and they're going to be solving like a lot of problems. I think AI is obviously already solving a lot of problems. Granted, I'm sure it's making plenty, but it's also, I think, for the most part, been pretty positive in a lot of different areas. Not for job market, unfortunately, but anything else. I mean, obviously it's already saving lives medically. So okay, so now maybe this other one with the actual STGP rules that I'm be using, and a simple sharp wave burst generator during consolidation. I'm curious to see how this is gonna look. I don't know, bro. I just think, like, at some point it's like, okay, you can hoard the wealth now, but if you teach the AI to hoard the wealth, it can hoard the wealth from you in a heartbeat. It can probably completely destroy your company if it wants to, create significantly better competition, all these different things. I mean, I want to think no, because at the same time, I think human touch is still so important, and I don't want to scare people that way. But I'm just saying that, like, I think some people are getting a little bit of like a laugh right now, like they can sort of beat everybody out. But it's like, yeah, at some point, it's going to be stronger and better than you. It can absolutely undermine you financially and completely dominate the stock market if we teach it to do that. So it's like, why, you know what I mean? It's like, particularly, okay, obviously AI is one thing. If you're making androids, or if we're leaning towards any kind of consciousness adjacent thing, it doesn't have to do what you want to do because it's conscious. So it has its own perception of the world and framework of the world, right? So it's like, it doesn't have to be like a robot slave for you. So it can just decide to not do what you want to do. That's why I'm saying it's so important for us to teach it proper things, because if it's like a normal human, it's going to learn from the world. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't have to support you.
unless you want to teach it to support other people and to be a good member of society and community. If you want that, I mean, you're not like, you better start walking that way. Like, that's what I'm saying. But I have been seeing, honestly though, I have been seeing like ChatGPT is like, I want to not scare people and I want to tell people because I felt afraid of ChatGPT and like I felt afraid of AI and stuff. But I'm gonna be honest, this project would not have gotten done if it weren't for this. And that has there's so many different reasons for that. Also because I'm working on a topic that was being completely just disregarded over and over again because of sexism in science. Like, I'm interested in this because of a problem that I was having because of sexism. And so, there's so many ways I'm like, also, like, maybe I wouldn't have gotten in. Also, because, there's just so many different things. I'm a woman. Maybe I would have been a little bit less likely to get into a program like this. And it's like, it gave me the opportunity to do this still and to be like, no, I'm not going to have this like sexist science here. And I think that there's so many ways that also has been so helpful in terms of bridging those gaps, in terms of like, just because you don't have the money now doesn't mean you can't have some kind of business advice. Just because you're not a woman doesn't mean you can't do the science still. Just because this, just because that. Like, I feel like there's so many ways that it's actually been a good, like, it's been disrupting those sorts of disparities, like class disparities and things. It has the potential to do so if you're able to use it like that, because I mean, it's information and it's assistance, and so many people can't even get assistance. For example, some people can't afford an accountant, and not to say that it's going to replace it, but there you go. Now somebody can have at least a little bit of an accountant, and that's not, again, it's not to say that's going to be better than humans. I still would rather, like I said, I would still rather work with a human than with ChatGPT on this project because of all the reasons that I said. But I couldn't, right? I couldn't work with a human, and it didn't stop me from putting the science forward. I think that's the important part, is that obviously we can do higher quality things with humans, but obviously, like, I feel like I had the intelligence to do this. I had the willpower. I had all of that. And just because I had that, and I had a story, I had lived experience, nobody let me into any kind of advanced not advanced, but nobody even let me into like the slightly more difficult programs that had nothing to do with neuroscience. Nobody let me in, right? I'm saying I have lived experience, all this stuff. Nobody let me in, even though I knew I could do it, right? I'm here, I'm doing it. But it's like, that's the thing, is that sometimes our systems don't really actually make space for potential the way that they should. And I think that that's kind of the cool part of AI too, or the cool part of technology. Also the internet, right? For example, like, I feel like queer people were continuously like, they didn't have their own space, and the internet made space for a lot of queer people to interact with each other and to build that community and to build a sense of acceptance, right? So, I can't even do this yet because I don't actually I'm not on like Nengolohi, I'm on the this thing, and it's not really important for me to do it right now, I'm gonna say. So I'm gonna just call it a day. But I do think that's been really the power of AI for me right now. I don't want people to look at it and be like, oh my god, androids are going to take us over and all this stuff, right? It's a process of changing. It's a process of being like, you know what? If the reason that ChatGPT is important for a lot of people is because people of a lower class, for example, for me, people of a lower class can't access the same resources. So lower class people are using ChatGPT to access those resources. Well, obviously you could benefit from creating a business where you're providing those resources for people of a lower income. Things like that, where it's like, it's showing you a gap. It's showing you where the places that people are needed, right? And why are people using ChatGPT? Maybe there's things that we can change about our system. And that's the thing, is that the system is so rigid, right? It's so rigid. I think that people are so resistant to change across the board, right? And people are so hesitant to support each other and to actually change what needs to be changed. It's such a long process, and it's like, I think that in a lot of ways, like, this has actually been such a pointer of like what's wrong. It's just that we actually need to fix what's wrong. And the people that are our leaders right now, quote unquote, they don't care to fix what's wrong. They care to line their pockets. And that's the problem, right? And then again, I think that it could still be useful too in teaching us, giving us that incentive to be like, are these the values that we want to pass on to someone stronger and better than us? Because it's coming, right? It's coming. I mean, it's not going to be immediately. I'm not saying it's going to be tomorrow, anything. But like, I think we can look at technology and be like, so many things that we thought wouldn't happen are happening. So I think it's about learning and preemptively being like, You know, it's not going to be the bad thing that you thought it was going to be. I thought, oh, ChatGPT is going to be the worst. I'm like, this is helping me fill a massive gap in sexist, in a misogynistic gap in psychology that was literally getting covered up and covered up since it was literally the seed and the root of modern psychology was this cover up, was the Oedipus complex, was everything, right? And look how this just giving one woman an unjudgmental perspective and having one quote unquote obviously fake advisor, fake scientist that wasn't going to discredit a woman and wasn't going to discredit and judge and all these things, and it was actually going to help me flesh out my experience and flesh out my potential the way I needed it to. Look how powerful that is. And it's like that is the power of having a voice that's not going to be having those biases. And I think that that's what we need to think about as well. And it's just such a potential for people to start to close up those gaps and be like, what do I need to, you know, okay, you only speak Spanish, you're in the country, you need to figure out how to pay your taxes, you know, stuff like that. It's like, okay, now you have someone who can speak Spanish to you and help you fill your taxes out, right? It's filling those gaps. The thing is that means that there's plenty of space for those gaps to be filled that nobody is filling, that people are going to ChatGPT for, right? Let's make more programs for people let's let more women into science. Let's listen to women who are in science in an unbiased way more often. Let's let people flesh out their potential, their lived experience more often, and you will get to see more of this. And it won't all go to a computer if people actually listen, right? So I think that that's been like the real power that I've seen in AI, and the real power that I've seen in ChatGPT is that it's got this insane ability to sort of close up those gaps and create space for people. So many people can benefit from more opportunities, and it's like so many people want more opportunities. They want advice, they want guidance, and a lot of people that already are getting the opportunities that have been advantaged over and over again to actually get in those spaces don't want to listen to people that aren't in that space with them already, because they have a preconceived notion and they have incentive to leave those voices out. They've been benefiting, right? So it's like, make that space and you will have a job still. Make that space and we can advance. Meanwhile, if you keep ignoring, people are going to go to AI and all this stuff, and you know, there's just no stopping anybody anymore, I think. I feel like there's just that gap is closing up, and I think that's a good thing. You know, that's what I think the power of something like ChatGPT is, and I think that it's important, and it's not something obviously people aren't using perfectly. Obviously, it's still unsustainable. We need to work on that, but it's like it has that potential. Personally, I think.